my story starts when I was going to Sunday school. My parents used to go to church. I was 11 at the time. I was doing lots of sports, just been chosen to run for the top club in England. But I started to get little problems. We've been to see the doctor that I had a lump come down my nose, which was polyps. And then I was starting to have hearing problems, so I was moved in class forward. So they were on about putting a grommet in my ear. And I started to get severe migraines. And then I was booked in to have an appointment at the hospital just to have an X-ray to remove the polyps. And I went to the hospital, and after half an hour had my X-rays and everything else, and then as soon as we sat down, the man from the X-ray said, "Oh, they didn't quite come out right." So I went again, and then this happened again. He said, "We need to do more X-rays," and it was about 4 or 5 times I had to keep going back. And then what happened? I had a tumour that was filling my head. So the lump, which they thought was a polyps, was a tumour coming out my nose. It was pressing against my brain to cause me to have migraines, and also it was blocking my ears so I couldn't hear. So I was asked to come in 2 days later to the hospital. Went to Maidstone Hospital, ear, nose and throat. They did a biopsy and took a little bit and then packed me because it was an angioma fibrous tumour, which is basically blood cells. The doctor that done the biopsy, he wasn't sure what it was, and he said to my mum and dad, "Look, we think you're going to have to find somewhere in Russia or Asia to find a doctor that can deal with this tumour." He said, "I've seen something very similar 26 years ago, and I think it's, as I said, angioma fibrous tumour, but his is bigger than anything we've ever seen." My mum and dad put the house on the market. Kind people offered to pay, give their savings to support me, and the church, well, though we didn't have emails in them days, people from the church were ringing friends and that and praying for me, and letters were going out to different churches. There was a hospital in London where a professor there said he'd done an operation before, that I would come and see him. But because of the packing and everything, I was a good chance of hemorrhaging. So the journey on the ambulance would have probably killed me. So they asked my mum and dad to drive to London very slowly, and if I started to bleed, just pinch my nose as hard as they can to stop the bleeding. Well, we got into London. Obviously, God had been with me, and we survived that. We got into the ward. My mum and dad spoke to the doctors and hadn't told me everything, but then she'd been told that if they could shrink the tumour, I had 26% chance of living, but they'd have to remove one of my eyes at least, my ear, and all my teeth and the part of my cheekbone. But she was, well, if that has to be, that has to be. But unfortunately, I had a scan, and the scan said it was too aggressive, so that they only had days to operate on. So the chance of survival was obviously much smaller. Went into the theatre. My mum and dad took a slow journey up, and when they got to the hospital, they went to the ward. Just as they got in there, all the nurses were crying. So my mum said, "He's gone, isn't he?" And they said no. They hadn't told the nurses how ill I was, so that they'd give me a better environment of living, to give me the last few good days. But I survived. I came through after about a 10-hour operation. I was in intensive care and suddenly kept waking up, and the professor there that was operating, he was beside me, and so was my mum, and he tested my right eye first and said, "Oh, you can see," and then he said, "Well, he won't be able to see out his left eye. I've taken his eye out of the socket. It's been on his cheekbone for at least 20 minutes. I've had to scrape the optic nerve," but he tested me even so. He said, and he went, "Oh, you can see." And he tested me again, and they said, "Well, it might be temporary vision." So then an hour later, my mum's he said, "It's a miracle." He said, "It's a miracle of my medicine." My mum went, "No, it's a miracle of God." After a few weeks, I managed to get out of hospital. I was still very poorly and everything, but I was getting a bit fitter, start to get to normality. Uh, I was told that to be careful because I had a very high percentage chance of hemorrhaging. But after 2-3 months, suddenly there was a bit more swelling come down. I went to see the professor, which I had done for nearly every week since I've been there. And then he suddenly realised, had done some x-rays and a scan, that the tumour was back and it had filled all the recesses that he'd removed. He then said to my mum, "There's nothing more I can do." He said that there's 2 experts, one's a radiotherapist and one's chemotherapy, which one would you want to go with? Well, she didn't know the difference between the 2 at the time, and they were both quite new techniques at the time. So they decided to go with the radiotherapist because she was more hopeful, and so I was then taken to Royal Marsden Hospital, where I had 12 weeks of radiotherapy. This was the idea that they would shrink the tumour enough that they could be able to operate. So I had the radiotherapy every day, apart from weekends, for 12 weeks. And at the end, they took some x-rays to see if it got any smaller. And when they took x-rays, it had gone. So they couldn't believe it. So I had lots more x-rays, but it had gone. I knew that if I survived to 18, that I had to have plastic surgery. Really, 18 was a big step. I didn't think I'd live till I was 18. But when I was 16, I'd taken an apprenticeship, which I was got up in the door because we needed qualifications that I didn't have. But because my report said I worked so very hard, they took the chance on me and took me. At 18, just over 18, I then had the plastic surgery to rebuild my face, they totally reshaped my nose, they restructured my cheekbone, which they took from my ribs. Then I was given all clear. But I made this deal, I thought we'd made this deal, me and God, that was the last surgery I'd have. So a week later I went back to work, which was good because I was supposed to have 3 weeks off. But the following week, I'd just fallen under a 6-ton lorry. I had steel toe caps on it, collapsed one over one foot, and I broke my tibia and fibula on the other. I had it all put in plaster, but 3 months on, it wouldn't heal. So then they decided that I needed to have it plated and bone graft. After 11 months in total, they took the full-length plaster off. But obviously I'd lost all mobility in my leg, so I had some physiotherapy, which meant I could walk but very badly with a limp. I then went back to work, and they were good, and I had to do an extra year's apprenticeship. I did, because it was an industrial accident, I'd seen lots of doctors, and they'd put me at 15% disabled for life, because they said I'd never be able to run again. With my apprenticeship, because I sued the company, they laid me off and kept the other apprentice that run over me as to take on as full-time, which was a bit of a sad situation. And then one day I was walking down a road which I never really used to walk, and God said, "Can you see the building over there?" And it was a military careers office. And I went, "Yeah." He said, "Go in and I want you to try and join the RAF." I believed I was too short. So I thought, hang on, God said, so we'll give it in. So the man on the desk, saw him, and the first thing he went, "Oh, hello." I went, "Hello, my name's Paul Myers. I'm 5'2". I've had plastic surgery and had my face reconstructed, and I'm 15% disabled. And he went, "Would you like to take the test?" And I thought, this is weird. So I sat the test and done very well. Little did he know that I couldn't run at the time. Well, that caused a lot of problems. My mum and dad and brothers and sisters said, "No, you can't run, it's possible." But I used to run straight-legged and just try to force my leg to bend. Gradually it did, after lots of swelling, and it started to mend a bit. At this time, I then had an appointment to see their specialist. I thought it'd be for the leg, but it was to do with my surgery. So it was good that it was 2 months later, so I could try and get fitter and fitter. So I used to run every day, still with a stiff leg, but it was starting to bend. So I saw there's 3 top surgeons, top doctors in the Air Force in London, and I saw the third one. I went to see him, and he said, done this test, and read all my notes, and he went, well, he said, according to your notes, you shouldn't be able to hear. And he said, I've done these laser tests with your eyes, and there's no way you should be able to see properly. I said, do you wear glasses? And I said, no. And he went, how, according to this, you shouldn't be able to see. I said, well, I can. So he then, well, I don't know. I don't think we can let you in, but I don't know enough about it, so I'll send you to the next doctor. So 2 months later, I went and saw him, which again gave me a chance to keep my legs start to bend more. And I saw the next one, done the same test, read my notes and everything else, and he said, well, it's weird. He said, as the other doctor said, you shouldn't be able to see properly, you shouldn't be able to hear. And he said, I'm going to have to fail you because you wouldn't be able to fit a gas mask. And suddenly he went, yeah, because you've got two sides of your face different. Well, something plucked me up, and I went, isn't a gas mask supposed to fit anybody's shaped face? So wouldn't it adapt to both sides? He went, oh, don't be so silly. He went, and he said, all right then, I'll send you to the next doctor, but he will just say exactly the same as me. So this was my last doctor to see. I couldn't go any further. I went to see the doctor, and by this time my leg was starting to get better and better. And after seeing him, again all the same process, the tests, everything else, the notes, he sat me down, was quite good, and he said, well, you can see, can't you? And I said, yes. And he said, you've got very good vision. He said, you can hear, we've tested your hearing. And he said, I know that the other doctor said about the gas mask and everything else. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, to be honest, I don't know whether to say yes or no. He said, because of all the stuff you've had done, we don't know if you'd be able to cope with the RAF. He said, who did you operation on you? And I said, the first operation in my plastic surgery was Professor Harrison. He went, I know him. I said, wait a minute. And he rang Professor Harrison while I was still in the room, and all I could hear in the background, very faintly, was, wish him all the best. And then he just went, well, if he says wish you all the best, who am I to argue? So then I got into the RAF. And since then, I've just been going with God, basically, and just being blessed, and still get my trials and troubles. I've been blessed with two beautiful young daughters, wonderful wife. Had lots of operations since for different things, but God's always been with me and always restored my health.